welcome to our November training opportunity. We do have a guest speaker with us today, Glennis Dawson from my NHD. She's going to be going over some, I guess more about like the fire and the new assembly bill and things like that. So we'll talk about, she'll be talking more about that when we get there. So do you want to go to the next slide? This is just a kind of a rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to go over a little bit of a recap on the NAR litigation. If you guys have any thoughts or questions or anything like that, you guys can drop them in the comment section or the questions section. We're also going to be going over some buyer agent resources that kind of go along with what is going on with the NAR litigation, with the verdict and all of that. And so kind of some things that you can do as an agent that will boost your knowledge and your presence in the buyer agent market, especially in terms of selling yourself and kind of what that entails. CAR has some really great resources that are available to you. Then we're going to go over some tips about contracts. We've seen a lot of questions that are coming about regarding like how you can get payments if your listing cancels or it expires, if you have an entity who is signing the purchase agreement or the listing agreement, as well as many questions on contingencies. So we're just kind of going to briefly go over that and point out some resources that we have. And then Glennis will speak, and then we'll go over our holiday schedule and when our office will be closed. So next. So we'll just go ahead and jump on in to kind of go over, sorry, about the CAR. So CAR sent out an FAQ. They actually had a couple of webinars, kind of open-ended meetings with their legal team that, you as a CAR agent could have attended if you wanted to. I know Yeva and I attended a couple of them. And so, us as CAR members, we were able to ask some questions to their legal team. And so they kind of put together a bunch of FAQs, kind of surrounding what the NAR litigation means, does it impact California, things like that. And so I just kind of briefly pulled a few different ones to talk about that I thought was important. The first question is, what is the lawsuit about? You may or may not know if you've been paying attention. And it was a class action lawsuit that was filed in Missouri. And it was filed with a class of sellers between April 2015 and June 2022, where commission was offered on the MLS from the listing agent to the buyer's agent. And the plaintiffs were suing NAR and 4 other large brokerages because they stated that it was that the defendants were conspiring against the sellers to keep commissions really high. They're stating that they didn't know that a portion of the commission that they agreed to was going to essentially be acting against them by paying the other side of the transaction. And they're stating that it was violating antitrust laws and a bunch of other things. The trial was very quick. It was a jury trial. It lasted 11 days, and the jury came back with a verdict against the defendants. And so 2 of the main brokerages, RE/MAX and Reology, I guess it's Anywhere Real Estate now, they settled prior to trial. And so NAR and the other 2 major brokerages, Keller Williams and Home Services of America, they were found guilty in the amount of $1.8 billion, which could be tripled because of some legal terms that I'm not super familiar with, but it has to do with damages and how you can and how it's calculated in terms of how many defendants and things like that. And so basically, the 3 defendants that were still left in the case, they are going to appeal the court's decision. However, that may take some time. So next. So some questions that you may have as an individual is, do individual members of CAR and NAR have liability in this case? And the answer is no. They were specifically suing the franchise and the corporate entities. They're not seeking damages from individual realtors. And then reminder, this was in Missouri. So this was a Missouri MLS with Missouri realtors. But it could have an impact nationwide eventually, perhaps. We don't know. So what are the next steps in the lawsuit? So NAR will post a bond to appeal the jury's verdict. They're confident they'll prevail, so we will just kind of keep our eye on that. They're also seeking that the court reduce the amount of damages that were awarded. How long does the appeal process take? The appeal process is very lengthy. There's a lot more that goes into it. I'm not a legal expert at all. So this is just something that they put together. They have a certain amount of times. It could be like 90 days to 120 days in order to just file the first briefs for the appeals to begin. So they're estimating that the final decision may not be made for like several years. So we will see kind of what that entails. The trial judge didn't put forth any injunction orders that would require NAR or the other brokerages to alter any kind of business practices or any of the policies yet. So we will just kind of keep an eye on that. And if they do end up putting forth any kind of orders, we will see how that may or may not affect what we do at REeBroker. But at the moment, nothing has been set forth. So we'll see. Next. So will NAR increase dues? That was definitely one question I had, because obviously it's very expensive to, one, be in a lawsuit, and two, to then do the appeal process. So NAR has stated right now that they don't plan to raise member dues, that they have enough money in the corporate entity to post the bond and start the appeals process and all of that. So so the answer is no so far. Are smaller independent brokerages at the same risk of being sued for similar antitrust lawsuits? That definitely was something that I had kind of questions about. However, Carr stated that no, typically when it's a class action lawsuit, they have to have a class, which is a legal term, has a certain number of plaintiffs in the pool. So they need a larger target corporate entities in order to have that large client base. So smaller brokerages aren't as likely to be put into a similar lawsuit as this. And then what's the possibility of a class action lawsuit in California? Well, California, the CAR is very confident that we have a lot of competition and benefits and things put in place already. It is always a possibility. Anyone can sue anybody. So, but in California, we have a lot of different broker business models that give consumers lots of different choices on who they're going to use in real estate to sell their home or buy their home, or help them buy their home. And so agents, you guys should just be very transparent and open with the conversations with your buyers and your sellers about what the compensation includes. And you should always let them know that the compensation that like either you suggest or that they see, it's always negotiable. And so we would just want that to be stated there. And then there are a lot more questions in the CAR FAQ. There's probably like 4 or 5 pages of questions and answers. And so I put the link down here. You can see that, you can write it down, rewatch this, and then you can kind of follow suit and read through all of the questions that they put by following that link. Next.
If you want to be a little bit more prepared to talk to your buyers about the compensation, the commission, CAR is offering a buyer representation forms that will help you with the discussion, and you can give these to your clients. You just have to go to CAR and use the code FREE25 at checkout. I really suggest them. California does a good job about opening up commission. In our CAR documents, you will see that there is that wording already. So please be sure to look at these courses. And the way they describe it is learn how to overcome objections and firm up your buyer relationships with the free buyer representation form course. So buyer agents are really important. We need to represent our buyers, and you need to be able to communicate to your clients why you are important. Then there is a buyer's agent resource. CAR created this smartzonecar.org/buyer's agent resources. It's free to look at. Just go to that website. I was reviewing it. In the resource hub, there's membership benefits, smart tips for new agents, training, education, webinars, business tools, legal tools, wellness resources, safety resources, and a lot more. It's a really great tool, and I'm really happy that CAR is doing this. You really should go check it out. We highly suggest it. And I hope if you guys do check it out, you give us feedback about if you like it or not, and tell other agents the same. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, of course. And that smartzonecar.org, it's relatively new. They just kind of recently rolled it out. So definitely keep that in mind, check it out, provide feedback to CAR. If you have any questions on anything that you want to see there, things like that. But it's a really great resource for you guys. We did have a question about whether or not we are considered a smaller brokerage. And the answer to that is yes. We are considered a relatively small in terms of like RE/MAX or Keller Williams, who have like tens of thousands of agents nationwide. So I'm looking at more of a national scale versus just a California scale. So yes. All right, so we're going to kind of jump into a couple of tips for contracts that I mentioned earlier. So we did have several questions from agents this month regarding how to recover fees if your listing cancels or expires, things like that. And so one thing I really wanted to point out was that you definitely want to fill out section 3C on the residential listing agreement, where it says seller agrees to pay the broker. So this is in addition to the compensation that you would receive when at close of escrow. So C is something separate. So this is the section that you would include fees such as like if you want them to pay for your transaction coordinator, if you want them to pay for or reimburse you for marketing fees, gas, mileage, staging, you know, I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm missing, but what we really suggest that you do is attach a list of all fees, all the specific kinds of fees and the amounts of fees, attach it to the listing agreement so that, and have them sign it, and then make sure that it's very clear on there that these specific fees, not necessarily the compensation as a whole, but these specific fees are reimbursed even upon cancellation or expiration. But you definitely want to make sure that everything is written out and very clear and detailed. Next. Okay, so this one is definitely a big one. Entity signing. We have lots of corporations, LLCs, probates, trusts, things like that who are buying and selling real estate all the time. So in the REeBroker Group document library, we do have a document that states the title is How to Complete an RPA or an RLA with the representative capacity or an entity. Next. So in the 2021 new residential purchase agreement, section 32 and 33, if these sections are filled out appropriately with the legally authorized signer, then an RCSD-B and an RCSD-S are not required. If this section is filled out incorrectly, the broker will ask that you fill out an additional form. It's really great that CAR incorporated this into the purchase agreements and the listing agreements, because it just cuts down on one extra form that, you know, that you don't have to have your client fill out. So this is a little snapshot of what section 32 looks like on the buyer's offer, like on an RPA where it states the buyer's offer. Next. So for this section, you're going to want to make sure that 32B is checked and the appropriate signers' names are listed. And then the entity name would go in the printed name of the buyer section, as well as any other section that says buyer. So this is where you would put, you know, Sarah Trust. that would be the entity name. That's where the buyer is going to be. Then the signature will be the authorized signer on behalf of that entity, that trust, that LLC, anything like that. It has to be that person's personal signature. So you can't be signing Sarah Trust. That doesn't make sense. It needs to be my name on behalf of the trust. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the printed name of the legally authorized signer, that's where you're going to print the name. And then the title would be, you know, trustee, manager, executor, beneficiary, administrator. Kind of depends on what the title is, depending on if it's an LLC, a trust, a probate, etc. So it's very, very important that these sections are filled out. If you are using DocuSign or e-signatures, it's really easy to mess it up and have the person sign electronically with the trust name in the signature line, which is inaccurate. It's not authorized. So, and it won't be valid for the brokerage. Next. And then it goes same for the acceptance section, except that this is if the seller is an entity. But it's the same thing. You're going to check that box 33B, fill it out with the appropriate signer's name. Next. And it's going to be the exact same things. Printed name of the seller is going to be the entity name. And then you're going to use the personal signature of the signer. Do not sign LLC, trust, anything like that should not be in the signature line at all, in the actual signature. And then you're going to use the printed name and then the title. Next. And then on the new residential listing agreement, it's also the same thing. The RLA at the bottom, check that entity seller's information, and you'll fill it out the exact same way. Next. And then I just wrote basically the same thing. So this is exactly the same thing. You just, just nailing it. Hopefully drilling it into you guys that do not sign as the trust, do not sign as the corporation, do not sign as the LLC. You want to make sure that your clients are aware of that. And if you are the one, or your TC is the one filling out the DocuSign or the e-signature fields, you want to make sure that this is filled out correctly so that when they go to sign it, it's not done incorrectly and you're not waiting at the close of escrow for your demand to be sent because you have to redo this stuff. So next.
Thank you, Sarah. So I just wanted to give a quick example one more time.
Yeah.
So the signature, for example, let's take Sarah. Sarah would sign Sarah, like her signature. The printed name of the seller would be REeBroker Group, and the printed name of legally authorized signer would be Sarah, and the title is Director of Operations. So if you guys have any questions, just make sure to email us.
Yes, exactly. And definitely, if you have any questions on if you have an entity that's going to buy or sell, email us first before you write up the contracts. It'll be easier to do it right the first time than have to go back and, have your seller or buyer re-sign everything. That's a nightmare, especially right there at the close of escrow. The other questions we've had a lot of questions on, and this, of course, in real estate, it's recurring, is contingencies and their removal. So what's a contingency? Contingency is defined as a condition or action that must be met for a real estate contract to be binding. It becomes part of the binding sale contract when both parties agree to the terms and they sign the contract. So the contingency clause essentially gives parties the right to back out of the contract under certain circumstances, even without legal consequences. Next. So I listed the common buyer contingencies and the common seller contingencies. These are, of course, not an exhaustive list. This is just kind of what are pre-printed on the car contracts, but other ones may be included depending on the scenario of your real estate transaction. Next. Okay, so each respective buyer or seller contingency has a default time period, and each time period is negotiable between the buyer and the seller. That's why they have the little section on the purchase agreement where you can write in whatever contingency time frame that you and the seller or buyer want. So it's everything is negotiable. Next. And in California, all contingencies are active contingencies and must be removed in writing. I've had a lot of questions in the last week that states, well, our time period expired. It's already passed. And I'm like, okay, but did they remove it in writing? Well, no. Okay, well, they're still active then, because everything has to be removed in writing. So what do you do when the contingency is not removed by the specific time frame? Well, you as the seller or the buyer will issue a notice to perform, which is a form from CAR, and then that ensures that all the parties stick to the agreed upon deadlines and contractual duties that are defined in the purchase agreement. So you will send that notice to perform. The default is 2 days, so it gives that other party 2 days to comply, or you can cancel the transaction. Next. And then what does it mean when all contingencies are removed? It means that when the contingencies are removed, the buyer may not be entitled to the return of the buyer's deposit if the buyer does not close escrow. So this is if the buyer, the stipulation may occur if the buyer is not satisfied with an aspect of the property, or if the lender does not approve the buyer's loan, things like that. But even if those aspects are not satisfied, say the lender doesn't approve the buyer's loan, but the buyer already released that contingency, well, they can't cancel based upon that contingency because it's gone. So it's very important that you as agents are educating your clients on what contingencies are and when and how they need to be removed. So as a seller, you're going to want those contingencies removed as quickly as possible, on time, because that means that the buyer is going to satisfy all of their obligations and close escrow on time. As a buyer, you want to try to maintain your contingencies in place. So if the seller is letting it slide, then, you may keep them longer. But if the notice to perform is in play, obviously that changes the dynamic a little bit. So there's definitely some, give and take with contingencies, but you as an agent really need to be on top of it in terms of educating based upon if you're representing the seller or the buyer. Next. And so we do in our REeBroker Group document library, wanted to point out that we have these 3 documents, pros and cons of removing contingencies early, how to handle contingent chain transactions. That means if your buyer needs to sell a property and the seller needs to find a replacement property, contingent chain transactions, we have a document that kind of explains that as well as the contingency and removal document. So I really, really suggest that you guys take time to go through the document library. We have incredible resources that we've spent time and energy researching and writing up so that you have them. And these are 3 really good ones, especially if you're not clear on what a contingency is. Okay, next. All right, I will pass this over to Glennis from my NHD. Take it away. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For some reason, my screen has gone blank, so I don't see the PowerPoint.
Okay, Glenn. I'm not.
Zoom.
I am not sure.
Sure either. I'm not sure what happened. So all I see is Zoom. So I guess I can kind of maybe I can pull up my PowerPoint and kind of follow along. I'm not sure how we're going to do this.
I'll stop share for a second, and then I'll reshare. Maybe that'll help with you and any of our attendees.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Let me reshare.
Yay!
Okay, good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay.
Of
Hi,
course.
everyone. My name is Glennis Dawson. I am with My NHD. I've been a licensed agent for 17 years, been in the industry for 20. Love working for My NHD. They are a wonderful company, like a family. I've loved working for them. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Assembly Bill 38, home hardening and defensible space inspections. If you can go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, this is the statement sheet that the buyer and the buyer's agent signs to confirm receipt of the report. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit, but let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so Assembly Bill 38. This was passed January 1st, 2021, and we seem to still be kind of navigating our way through it when properties are located in a high fire zone. If you can go on to the next page, that would be wonderful. So I'm in North County. I handle all the North County coastal communities from Oceanside actually all the way down to Coronado. I also have a rep that handles Angela, that handles the 15 corridor and into Temecula. So we, with My NHD, we have reps all the way up north as well, depending on, where the properties are located on. But I had them kind of focus a map just in Carlsbad and Vista, since I, live and work in this area. And as you can see, there are a lot of hot fire zones coastal as well. So you never know if you're writing an offer, you're taking out a client. If you are in Carlsbad, Vista, Fallbrook, Valley Center, Rancho Bernardo, Poway, if the property is going to be located in a fire zone. So it's very important that you're able to identify those properties. And I can tell you how, because we have an amazing new tool that you can utilize on your phone, but I'm going to go back to that in a minute. If you can go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. So the FHDS form, we automatically generate this form for you in our report if the property is located in a fire zone. And the 3 different sections are a little confusing to sellers. They're confusing for everybody. So we try and walk everyone through the process. If you have questions, you can always feel free to reach out to me as well. And I can walk you and you through the process as well. But you see down at the bottom, the defensible space inspection portion of the FHDS. We also include at the bottom of our report the CAR form defensible space inspection tree, which is a great tool to help you and your client kind of navigate this section of the FHDS form. Okay, we're going to go down to the next slide. So what is home hardening? This is a great tool. I'm a visual learner, so this really helps me. When you're talking to a seller and you're taking a listing, and of course, this is applicable for properties that are built prior to 2010. Has the home been updated to protect the home from withstanding a wildfire? So does that mean that the roof has wood shingles versus a tile roof, or comp? Does the property have single pane versus dual pane? Around the perimeter of the property, is there mulch or is there stone? So these are some of the items to look out for, to have a conversation with your seller if they own a home prior to 2010. That makes it, that protects it more from a potential fire. So that's kind of what home hardening is in a quick minute there. And if we can go to the next slide. And so while we looked at that visual of home hardening, that helps fill out that second section. And there just repeats again, has the home been updated with single pane, dual pane, roofing, all of it, just like we just talked about, it's all in that second section. So that should be able to help guide your client on how to fill that portion out. Next. And here it is bigger. It is kind of hard to read some of that small print sometimes. And so again, we're just being repetitive here, but there you go. Okay, next slide. And now this is the defensible space. So that bottom portion that on the FHDS form, this is what it's referring to defensible space. So zone 1 is that 30 feet around the perimeter of the home. So that's what's located in zone 1. And again, that is mulch versus stone, any combustible material. Do they have firewood stacked up? Do they have propane tanks? Do they have pallets? Anything that would be combustible around that 30-foot perimeter of the home located in zone 1. Then zone 2 is anything that goes up to 100 feet to the property line, depending on, the size of the property. So that would be considered for zone 2. So hopefully these visuals, if anyone wants a copy of this little slideshow, I kind of created this myself and put it together. I'm happy to share it with anyone, but this really helps walk your clients through that FHDS form. Next slide. And again, there we go, referencing section 3. Okay, next slide. So again, I get this question a lot. So section 3B, is the seller aware of any local, right here, vegetation management ordinance? So a lot of the sellers are like, I have no idea. I don't know how to check this box. Is it yes or no? Well, on our report, we have an area. I don't know if I have a slide for that, but right on our report, we have a phone number, and it's a local phone number that the client can contact and find out if local vegetation, if there is an ordinance, so they need to check the box yes or no. So we try and reference all the information right on the report. Okay, make it easy for everyone. Next slide. That's just kind of what we just talked. Oh, buyer's responsibility, seller's responsibility. So, this is per your broker, however they want to direct you. But a lot of times when you take a listing and you immediately pull the NHD report to determine if the property is in a fire zone or not, it's great to be proactive and say, let's just go ahead and order that defensible space inspection, have it done up front. And then that way there's no delays through the escrow process. Some brokerages would prefer your seller to check the appropriate box to put it on the buyer to do that. So, or if the seller gets the defensible space inspection up front and the property is compliant, just put it in the file and there's nothing else that needs to be done. Or if the seller, does the defensible space inspection and it does not meet code, and there needs to be some work that needs to be addressed, then they can put that on the buyer's responsibility. And then they have that year to make that property compliant. So it really all depends too on how your broker wants you to handle that as well, or the conversations that you're having with your seller. But I can definitely say, as I do these presentations and I go out to different offices or sit one-on-one with agents, or I'm at a pitch session and I'm talking to somebody, an insurance broker, they will let me know that when that property is up for its 1-year annual renewal for insurance, an insurance adjuster will need to come out to the property and make sure that that property is compliant before they can renew the homeowner's insurance. So it's very important that this get addressed. Okay, and then if I can have you go to the next slide, please.
And Glennis, one of our agents, Kurt Wilson, asked, is that akin to weed abatement?
Is that a what? I'm sorry.
Is that akin to weed abatement? Is that similar to weed abatement?
Abatement, yes, that part, that is under the local vegetation compliance, correct? Yes, good question. So here, perfect. Okay, so again, there's also a lot of confusion whether or not the property is actually in a fire zone. So there's a very high, severe fire zone, high fire zone, there's state, there's local, it's in or out. It's a little confusing. So for us, we try and make it as simple as possible. If the property is in any type of fire zone, this page will pop up on your report right on page 2. And then it'll say, look, you need to order the defensible space inspection. So you just click the link and we'll take you right to the local ordinance, whoever needs to come out and inspect the property for you. And then right down at the bottom of the page, look right there is the local phone number that they need to call for that local vegetation ordinance if it's a yes or a no. So we just try and simplify the process for everyone, whether you are helping your client or your TC. You know, I get a lot of questions from our transaction coordinators as well. Okay, I think that pretty much concludes the defensible space and home hardening and how to order on our reports. What I want to jump to is a brand new tool. We are the only natural hazard disclosure company that just came up with it. It is myhazcheck.com, myhazcheck.com. You can load that right on your phone. It's not an app in the App Store, but it is a web-based, and I've put it right on my phone, myhazcheck.com, and I am able to go in when I'm writing offers and put in the property address, and I can determine right away whether it's in or out of a fire or flood zone. It is a wonderful tool. This way, if you're writing that offer and you know that that property right away is located in a fire zone, you can then reach out to your insurance broker. The insurance broker can give you an estimate, a quote per se, on how much approximately homeowners insurance would cost on that property if it's insurable at all. So I have a lot of agents that have told me, Glennis, oh my goodness, I wish I had this tool. I wish I knew to reach out to you. I just had to fall out of escrow. My buyer couldn't afford the insurance on the property. So myhazcheck.com, wonderful tool. And then lastly, to conclude, there is a new report that has just come out, and it's called the Fortress Fire Report. I sat on a webinar yesterday, so I'm just learning about it right now. But the RPA has just been updated, and in the drop-down, there is now a box that you can check if you want to include that separate report. That is a separate report from the natural hazard zone report, and it is an additional cost of $140. It is an additional tool. I would think more from a buyer's perspective of if that property is not up to code, what would it take from the perspective of insurance to get that property up to code, if that makes sense. So we're just sitting on the CAR webinar yesterday and listening to everything that's included in the report. So if anybody has any questions on the Fortress Fire Report, please feel free to reach out to me. If I don't have the answers, I will get the answers from my management team as the information becomes available.
Thank you, Glennis. And then we have a few more questions.
Okay.
Andrea asked, who is Glennis's counterpart in Northern California, Central Valley?
Northern California, Central Valley, I believe that's Britt. But if you give me your phone number, I will send you Central Valley. I will send you Britt's information. He is phenomenal.
Perfect.
Okay.
Andrea will send an email out to you with Glenna's information. And then Juanita asked, I'm in Los Angeles. Are you able to provide services to me, or do you have a rep out there I can work with?
I have amazing reps out there. Sabrina is in Pasadena. Sage is in San Gabriel Valley. You just have to let me know what area of LA, and I can match you up with a representative that covers that area.
Perfect. So I'll send you an email with that
Yeah,
agency.
Fabulous.
I was gonna say, will you go back to Glennis's contact page, and then those who are asking can write
that's
down.
perfect.
And the
Can
wonderful
write.
thing is, if you
There we go.
order an NHD report, you don't have to put down a representative's name. We're a team, and so just as long as the report is ordered for my NHD, we appreciate your support, and we're here to help you. And again, our management team works very closely with CAL FIRE, so they are extremely knowledgeable. We are the only NHD company that has a $10 million E&O coverage. So basically, if at any time our report is incorrect, that covers all parties in the transaction: TCs, agents, escrow, everyone. Fortunately, knock on wood, we've never been sued. So, but it's nice to have that $10 million E&O coverage.
Excellent. Thank you. So Juanita and Andrea, this is the contact information for Glennis. Just let her know and she'll just answer, or like she said, just go to mynhd.com and you'll find out more information. Roger asks, are homes with wood shingles insurable in LA County or like California, if you know that?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think that would have to be directed to an insurance broker.
Okay, thank you. And then Kurt Wilson, the free forms are we'll probably put it underneath our YouTube under our YouTube description. But oh, I see. Yeah, let me if you go, we can do this together actually. Let me pull up a website so everyone can see. Let me stop sharing this, and I will share a new page. There we go. So if you share car.org, if you go here, it will be it usually was at the top. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we'll share that link. Usually it wasn't under emails. So I thought it'd be over here, but we'll share that link. Do you guys have any other questions? Perfect. Well then, thank you everyone.
Oh yeah, but sorry, yeah, but do you want to share the holiday schedule real quick, just so they know?
Oh yes, I am sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want for those who are left on, we're gonna just briefly show you kind of when our office will be closed for the upcoming holidays. Since we won't be having a webinar in December, we're only gonna have we'll have one in January, and we'll send out a new link for that. And so I just wanted to kind of put that when we're going to be closed for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. That way you guys can plan accordingly.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So our holiday schedule is, so Thanksgiving will be closed on Thanksgiving Day and that Friday. Business hours will resume on Monday. There is the broker emergency hotline. Will still be available, but we do ask you that you only use it if it is an emergency, so that our team members can have time with their family. On Christmas, the office will be closed that Monday, and the day after Christmas, that Tuesday. The business hours will resume on Wednesday. And for New Year's, the office will only be closed on Monday, January 1st, and we'll resume our regular business hours on that Tuesday. So thank you, everyone.
Yes. And we'll be sending out, you know, a company-wide email with the dates, but we just wanted to kind of show you an overview of the upcoming dates that will be closed as well. So
yes. And then the next invitation, everyone will get a new invitation for our webinars starting in January. We'll be using a different link. So just so you know that you just please re-register or make sure to schedule it once that happens, and it will be the 18th of January. Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
all right.
you.
Bye. Thank you.